yeah, solar energy will use lots of land. However, since I'm from Illinois, I think I'm qualified to explain why you probably don't need to worry too much about land use. That is a cornfield. It doesn't look like much right now because it's the middle of January, but corn used to be growing there and it was harvested in the fall. Now, there's three very notable things about this reality. First of all, this land should not look like this. This is Illinois, we're the prairie state. The natural environment is prairie, and now there's virtually none of that left because it has all been turned into farms. Secondly, we only get one harvest per year out of this land. We spend all the summer growing the corn, and then in the fall it's harvested just once. If this was a solar farm, it could have a harvest every single day. And third, if you're thinking, well, what if we stop growing corn there? We can't eat anymore. Well, this corn is not the corn that you eat. Some of it does end up in lots of different food products, but a large portion of this corn gets used for that. Yeah, those messages on gas pumps, which say may contain up to 10% ethanol, that came from corn. We have been using an astonishing amount of our rich agricultural land to grow corn to feed to cars. Maybe you remember the days of flex fuel vehicles and E85 being relevant. Well, back in 2005, President George W. Bush signed the Energy Policy Act of 2005, and in 2007 he signed the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. Those acts mandated a specific amount of ethanol in gallons which needs to be produced so it can be mixed with gasoline. The idea, as you might have gleaned from the independence and security part, was to start making our own energy for cars so that we'd be less dependent on foreign oil. A policy I wholeheartedly support. The only trouble is that doing it with corn ethanol is tremendously stupid. First of all, it's important to acknowledge that we only get one corn harvest per year. Now, an acre of cornfield might be able to produce 550 gallons of corn ethanol when all is said and done. I'd like to note that it takes an awful lot of chemistry and energy to turn corn into ethanol, but we'll just ignore that and pretend it's easy and free. So let's go back to that solar farm. If this were a 120-acre cornfield, then at the end of the year we can get maybe 66,000 gallons of ethanol out of it. That's about 5 tanker trucks worth. Now, if you didn't already know this, ethanol is less energy dense than gasoline, so E85 vehicles which run on E85 have a really poor fuel economy in miles per gallon. It's about a 40% penalty. But I'll be generous. Let's say those 66,000 gallons of corn ethanol all make it into cars that can go 30 miles on a gallon of E85. How far can they drive? Well, 66,000 gallons times 30 tells us that they can go just shy of 2 million miles. That might seem like a lot, but now let's consider how many miles electric cars that are being charged from the 27 megawatts of solar panels on a 120-acre plot of land can drive every year. The operator of that solar farm's website claims it generates about 37,000 megawatt hours of energy every year. Well, the website says in year one, so it's possible it wasn't yet complete when they came to that figure, but I'm just going to roll with it. Electric cars generally get something like 3 or 4 miles per kilowatt hour. But let's go ahead and make the picture worse for them and say they can only manage 2, which is what my car can get down to in extreme cold. Well, 37,000 megawatt hours is 37 million kilowatt hours. So every year, these panels can push electric cars at least 74 million miles. That's 2 million miles of driving each year from corn versus 74 million miles of driving from solar panels. So, do you really think we should still be growing corn to feed to cars? Here's the best part though. Let's say you decided the answer is no, and we stopped growing corn to feed to cars. How many acres of cornfields would that free up? Well, this website I found says we've got 96 million acres of land growing corn in this country. And depending on how you count, between 25 and 40% of all that acreage is devoted to ethanol. So, let's just say we took a slightly fudged quarter of that land, 25 million acres, and covered it all in solar panels. How much energy would that harvest? Well, that's going to depend on where the panels are, and since we're going to do a thought experiment here where we put the panels in the corn belt, let's just keep using the numbers from the solar farm in Depew. Up here in Illinois, we can get 37,000 megawatt hours per year out of 120 acres. So let's see, 25 million divided by 120, and then multiplied by 37,000. That is 7,708,333,000 megawatt hours of energy. And why is that the best part? Because that's more energy than the entire US electricity grid produces right now, and by a lot. In 2023, it all added up to 4.178 billion megawatt hours. So, if all we did was decide to stop growing corn to turn into ethanol, and we used only that land for generating only solar power, we'd be able to generate 84% more electricity on an annual basis than we do today from all of our energy sources.